is WMBF News Today at 5.
This morning on WMBF News at 5, with kids back in the classroom, one school is offering a unique path for its students' career choices. We'll explain.
Also, as Louisiana continues to recover from devastating floods, help is on the way from right here in South Carolina. What's being done for those still in need of assistance?
Good Friday morning. Thank you for joining us here for WMBF News at 5. I'm Theo Hayes.
I'm Eric Weisfeld. As the sun prepares to rise over the Grand Strand, we're in store for yet another day of sunshine. We're talking comfortable temperatures.
We sure are. But meteorologist Andy Stein joining us now. Andy, you say there might be a chance for rain over the weekend.
Yeah, we had to switch.
Thank you, Meredith. 5:03 right now. As students head back to school, you may notice some are bringing home more than just homework. Doctors say the common cold is one of the first things students face as they head back to class. Pediatrician Dr. Caleb Wheeler says the common cold is pretty unavoidable when students first return to school, but there are a few tips to help you. The biggest tip, constantly wash your hands at school. Tell that to your kids. Hand sanitizer is a good tool to prevent germs. Feeding your students a healthy meal before they head out the door helps, and remind them to cover their mouth when they cough.
A lot of the actual virus.
Dr. Wheeler says also teach your children to keep their hands away from their mouths and nose and make sure they get good sleep.
All right, I wanted 90s.
A church in Louisiana is partnering with a charity based in North Carolina to provide aid to victims of the devastating floods that hit the state earlier this month. Hearts with Hands is a disaster relief organization. It's based in Asheville. So far, they've delivered critical supplies to Central Baptist Church in Baton Rouge. Those supplies include food, bottled water, and clothing. You can see cars there lined up on the road that leads to the church. Some folks waited 3 hours to receive supplies. Volunteers were able to help around 1,800 people.
These are really a blessing.
More supplies will be given out this weekend and next Tuesday and Thursday. A film studio that became a shelter to thousands of people who were left stranded by the flooding in Louisiana is now cleaning up and starting to look like a movie studio again. At one point, there were nearly 4,000 evacuees on the Celtic Studio properties in Baton Rouge. Those evacuees were joined by hundreds of volunteers. Even at its most hectic time, the team at Celtic knew they could pull this off. They had actually done this once before. The studio held about 500 volunteers from around the country in the aftermath of Hurricane Isaac. A number of Louisiana National Guard soldiers have stayed behind to help Celtic get back to looking like a film studio.
Meanwhile, churches in South
Carolina's capital has unveiled a plan for how it could spend millions of dollars in federal flood relief. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has allocated roughly $20 million to help the city of Columbia and its residents recover after last October's devastating flood. The city has to use most of the funds on low to moderate income people affected by the flooding, and that will likely come in the form of home improvement and even some home buyouts.
Unfortunately,
a new study finds a record high number of families are saving for college. According to Fidelity Investments' 10th edition of its College Savings Indicator study, savings for college is at an all-time high. 72% of American families are currently saving for their children's higher education. That's a 24% increase since the first year the study was published back in 2007. The study also found a 62% increase in the use of dedicated college savings accounts, such as 529 plans. There's been an all-time high of 41% of families reporting they own a 529 account.
Macy's
New details out of Rio de Janeiro this morning, where U.S. Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte will be summoned to appear before a Brazilian judge. He's accused of filing a false police report over the vandalism incident at a Rio gas station. The case sparked an international scandal during the Rio Games, and officials said Thursday police in Brazil have recommended Lochte be charged. A police detective told NBC News they are closing their investigation into the criminal case this week and will hand it over to Rio's public prosecutor. A formal document is expected to be sent to a U.S. court asking for cooperation in summoning Lochte to Brazil. There was no immediate response from his attorney to these new developments.
In the meantime, Lochte has...
The investigation continues following the apparent murder of two Catholic nuns who were found stabbed to death in the Mississippi home they shared. The nuns have been identified as Sister Paula Merrill and Sister Margaret Held. They were found by police during a welfare check after they didn't show up for work. The Catholic Diocese of Jackson said the nuns, who were both nurse practitioners, ran a local medical clinic. The deaths of the two elder women have left neighbors uneasy.
At first I was safe
reunification of his family.
And finally, a New Jersey boy with a heart of gold uses his allowance to buy lunch for a New Jersey police department. Meet 5-year-old William Everts Jr. He saved his allowance for 7 months to buy himself a Power Wheels police cruiser, but instead of treating himself at the store, he decided to spend his hard-earned chore money to show his appreciation to local law enforcement in Winslow Township. William's mom says her son has loved police officers since he was just 2 years old. To thank him for his efforts, the Winslow Township Police Department made William an honorary officer and presented him with his own badge and police car stickers.
Local late breaking. This is WNBF News Today at 5:30.
Hillary Clinton back on the campaign trail with just under 2.5 months before the election. We'll tell you what she is claiming Donald Trump's campaign is actually embracing.
Donald Trump responds to those claims, why he believes Hillary has something to hide.
And it has been a great week in weather. Meteorologist Andy Stein is checking out what it will be like this weekend. Andy, you say more of the same.
Does not have any public events scheduled for today.
Donald Trump called Hillary Clinton's charges that he allied his campaign with prejudice and hate groups disgusting and a smear on his millions of backers. Trump told supporters in New Hampshire that Clinton is the latest in a long line of Democrats who levy charges of racism against opponents to distract them from their own policy failures. The Republican nominee says Democrats have consistently failed minority communities and accused Clinton of seeing African American and Hispanic allies as votes to be collected and then ignored.
So what does she do?
Trump continued to accuse Clinton of corruption as Secretary of State, calling her actions the elements of a major criminal enterprise and the equivalent of Watergate.
An NBA Hall of Famer
Make it better, but he never says how.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry is in Switzerland ahead of talks today with his Russian counterpart on the conflicts in Syria and Ukraine. Kerry and the Russian foreign minister are scheduled to hold talks at a hotel in Geneva where both were seen arriving last night. Russia has agreed to a 48-hour humanitarian ceasefire in the divided Syrian city of Aleppo to allow aid deliveries. But UN officials say they are waiting on security guarantees from other parties on the ground there. The United Nations has pushed for a weekly pause in fighting in Aleppo to alleviate suffering for about 2 million people. But Russia supports the government in Syria, and rebel groups opposing the government are backed by Western and Gulf powers. All right, thank you, Andy. It's 5:39. The company that runs a ropes course in Delaware, where a 59-year-old woman fell to her death Wednesday, says the woman disconnected herself from that device. Officers say Tina Werner was standing on a platform that was located 35 feet above the ground when she fell. Employees, park rangers, and paramedics attended to Werner before she was taken to the hospital. That's where she died. The company says Werner underwent training and was told to stay attached to the safety measures. The company also inspected the course and says nothing was broken or unserviceable. The zip line was closed yesterday because of Werner's death.
5:39, a plane at that house at the time of the crash.
The stakes were high at a steakhouse in San Antonio. Police say a fight broke out between a customer and server at the Little Red Barn Steakhouse around 1 p.m. Central Time Wednesday. They say the fight broke out because the customer was unhappy with his food. They say the customer was on top of the server, punching him repeatedly. When the server managed to free himself, that server then pulled out a gun and pointed it toward the crowd before firing 3 shots in the air. Witnesses say the scene was chaotic.
he was the one that threw the first punch. And at any moment.
No one was hurt in that shooting. Police say both the server and the customer ran off before police arrived. The restaurant was closed while the incident was under investigation, but has since reopened. Police say both the server and the customer now face charges.
A wild chase in Florida.
And I think you should do the same.
All right, thank you, Andy. And a popular corn maze in Georgia is paying tribute to police officers. The Corn Dogs Adventure Park in Loganville unveiled the design for its annual 7-acre corn maze. This year's design features a police officer, squad car, and the words, "Back the Blue." Organizers say the artwork is always a reflection of what's going on in today's society. They say they wanted to thank first responders and let them know through all the negativity, there are people who support them. They say the maze masterpiece took about 6 hours to create.
Passenger would have died as well.
A carbon monoxide leak at a North Carolina catering company sent 15 people to the hospital Wednesday morning. Authorities say a broken hot water heater released carbon monoxide through the air conditioning system at Leon Nixon Catering, that's in Edenton. The building was evacuated after several employees experienced stomach pains, headaches, even nausea. 15 people taken to the hospital, including 5 first responders who have since been released. 9 employees are still being monitored, though, at Duke University Hospital. It's not clear if the business had working carbon monoxide detectors installed. The business remains closed as crews work to repair that broken water heater.
University of Vermont women and was attacked by sharks.
Today, Lexington County leaders are celebrating what could be a bigger than expected lift for homeowners who suffered devastating losses in last fall's flood. The county's plan to ask the federal government for flood aid will now include more than twice the number of flood-damaged homes to be bought out entirely. The county now plans to ask for funds to buy out as many as 65 homes. That plan was unveiled before County Council this week. Homeowners still struggling to recover say the process of getting aid has been difficult.
They kept wanting to know when it was going to happen for us.
Hiring for the positions has started and will continue throughout the next several years.
No charges will be filed in the shooting death of a 40-year-old man early yesterday. The solicitor's office says the shooting was in self-defense. The coroner's office identified 40-year-old Jamie Seals as the victim of a deadly gunshot wound to the chest. This was on Gilbert Road, that's in Conway. We brought this to you as breaking news yesterday. Seals' brother says the shooting happened at his home and that the incident was the result of an argument. He says Jamie punched the roommate in the head, causing the roommate to accidentally fire that gun, shooting and killing Jamie.
Horry County 911.
We are counting down to Race Day Live. That's the big WMBF pre-Bojangles Southern 500 race show. And there's a local school training kids to go straight into careers that could prepare them for big gigs in NASCAR. But the school is having a problem and they don't know how to solve it. Meredith Heline joining us live at Palm Charter High School in Myrtle Beach and found out the school's success could also be its downfall.